All right, welcome in everybody. Of course, this is not muted, so I'm going to mute this slowly so it's not going through everything. There we go. Hello again. Can cut that out. That was a little interesting, wasn't it? A little echo. Yeah. Now, this is going to be great. So what I wanted to do for you guys tonight was give you the basics of nutrition. And I really wanted to go through some of the most common myths that are out there when it comes to nutrition and give you some rationale behind why we make the food choices that we do. Now, we're doing this in webinar format for you guys so that you can stay home and you can stay socially isolated, but you will notice that there are a few people here in front of me and even to the sides of the camera. And it's just because they don't have access online like a lot of you do out there in internet land. So we will be opening this back up. Workshops will start up as churches open up back up at the beginning of June. So I'll talk a little bit more about what that next workshop is going to be. But that's going to be June 1st here at 6:30 unless announced otherwise. So that's going to be good. We're going to do a whole month on parenting, how to raise healthy families and kids from a 5 essentials perspective. So that's going to be really good. But tonight is dedicated to nutrition. And nutrition, a lot of people get wrong, and they start with the wrong premise. And that comes down to, number one, recognizing where health comes from. So get into the health. There we go. All right, so this should work. There we go. So really, you have to start with the foundation of health. What is health? And we talk about health as Americans as being this state of feeling good and looking good, right? We base our health on how we feel. And yet, over 2/3 of Americans die from heart disease, cancer, we get diabetes, we have strokes, throw in, let's say, dementia, Alzheimer's, and we're approaching 85% of all deaths that happen in the United States of America. And these deaths happen to people that happen to look good and feel good. In fact, for heart disease, this was over 640,000 deaths just by itself. Last year, you include strokes because that's another cardiovascular disease. That was over 200,000 deaths right there. That's 840,000 deaths just related to cardiovascular disease. For you to have a symptom of cardiovascular disease, that has to be building inside your body for 20 years before you feel it. So you can absolutely look good and feel good and not know that there's a disease process building up underneath you. And just from those two alone, that's over 1/3 of all deaths. And so we have to be more proactive with this. And we have to discard that notion that feeling good has anything to do with health. Because you go down this list, cancer, you don't feel that, right? Not unless you get lucky. And usually that luckiness is 10 years too late. Yeah, because at 10 years of having cancer, it's considered lethal. And then we want to base it on this healthcare system that only measures and diagnoses your symptoms. You guys may not realize this, but any diagnosis that the doctor gives you is probably just a Latin term for the symptom that you're having. What does arthritis mean? Joint inflammation. What does colitis mean? It means colon inflammation. Go on down the list, and you've got a Latin term for the symptom that you're having or the signs that are going on inside your body. It doesn't mean that there's a disease process going on inside you. What it means is there's a malfunction, because when we go to the real definition of health, health is a state not of feeling good, it's a state of 100% optimal function and the ability of your body to heal. So 100% is health, 0% is death, and unfortunately your first symptom doesn't show up until you've lost 40% function. So we have to be more proactive with it. We have to be more proactive because we're not going to feel this. We have to invest in our health. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. But where does function come from? It comes from above down, inside out, expressed through the nervous system. So through this here that we see on the side. And for your heart to beat, for your lungs to breathe, for a cut on your leg to heal, a signal has to run from your brain down the spinal cord and out these nerves to every organ, cell, and tissue. It doesn't happen any other way. It doesn't. We cut the brain stem. What happens to every nerve every organ, cell, and tissue below. It stops and you die. We cut all the nerves that go to your heart stops, it dies, you die. We just pinch those nerves, right? Just a little bit of pressure, and this is from the University of Colorado, some peer-reviewed research published in the 1980s. We know that the weight of a diamond, about 5 millimeters of mercury, can reduce the electrical flow, the electrical output through a nerve root by as much as 60%. That's not much pressure. You carry a weight of a diamond in your pocket and you don't even know there's any change in your pocket, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we need to be testing for. And this is a huge hole in our healthcare system. We don't look at the nervous system until there's a severe neurological condition, something that's diagnosable, right?
Right.
You get carpal tunnel syndrome. What's carpal tunnel syndrome? Well, it's numbness and tingling through the carpal tunnel region, right? You get that, and then they go in, they do a nerve conduction test, and they say, oh, your carpal tunnel's pinched off. But guess what? The distal nerve is far more durable, can put up with far more pressure than the nerve root. Far more. And so we have to be looking at your spine, because your spine is designed to surround and protect your central nervous system, the most delicate part of your nervous system, the most important part. Central nervous system is your brain. It's your brain stem. It's your spinal cord. It's the nerve roots as they exit off. And that spinal column is designed to surround and protect it. Your skull surrounds and protects your brain. The spinal column in each individual vertebra surround and protect your brain stem, your spinal cord, and each of those nerve roots as they exit off. Now that has a normal position. It should be straight up and down from the front with 345-degree curves from the side. When it's in that position, there can be no pressure or damage on your nervous system. But you take that out of alignment by even 2 millimeters or 2 degrees, that's enough to put that weight of a diamond pressure on that nerve root, disrupting it by as much as 60%. So how do you know if it's there if you can't feel it? You have to test. And so this actually gets back into my story. You guys have been around long enough that you've heard my story, but for any newbies that are online live watching this webinar right now, you may not know that as a 2-day-old baby, I had a clean bill of health. As a 2-week-old baby, however, that drastically changed. It was the same day I got my first doctor's well visit, right? Went in, got checked up, got that clean bill of health, went home. My mom was breastfeeding me, and that night I quit breathing on the breast and turned blue down to my elbows. So she does what any red-blooded American mother would do, Mother's Day or no, resuscitates me and takes me to the emergency. They monitored me all night. I quit breathing 14 times that night. They can't diagnose me. No diagnosis, sent home with a referral to a specialist. Just like most of you, right? You get a symptom, go to the doctor, get a diagnosis. If that diagnosis doesn't lead to a medication or a procedure that works for you, you go to a specialist. He'll then give you a special diagnosis, special drugs, all for a special price, right? And then if that doesn't work, then you're at a surgeon's office. So I go through this series of specialists, over a dozen different specialists, who all basically have no answers. They can't diagnose me. They can't even give me a Latin terminology for what's going on. I just quit breathing randomly up to 17 times in a night, every single night. So my mom's praying for me. My mom's asking her friends and family to pray for me. They're asking for help, as much help as they can get, because they don't know what's going on. This is my mom's firstborn child. She's a first-time parent. She doesn't know what to do with this information. So her friends and family are praying for her, and her best friend actually goes to her chiropractor and mentions what's going on with me. And he says, well, I help kids with asthma and allergies all the time. Praise God. Yes. Maybe I can help. So her best friend, Connie, comes back and says, you should try my chiropractor. 7 times, my mom says, too busy. I don't see how I can help. What's a chiropractor got to do with breathing problems? Before finally she brings me in. That chiropractor, he just grabs me and picks me up. He knows exactly what's wrong. My head's cocked over to one side. One eye is open larger than the other. One pupil's dilated larger than the other. He goes right to the top bone in my neck. Why the top bone in my neck? Why not to the vestibular cortex of my brain, which is responsible for holding me up? Because that's where all the cranial nerves exit out. What goes out from the vestibular cortex to the inner ear for balance? Cranial nerve 8. What goes out to my eyes that one would open larger than the other? Multiple cranial nerves to the eyes and the muscles of the eyes, to the pupil. What goes out to my lungs? The vagus nerve, cranial nerve 10, responsible for a relaxed state of breathing. And he does one adjustment because that bone on the neck is shoved over so far to the side that anytime I lay my head over to sleep or nurse, it cuts off and I quit breathing immediately. He does one adjustment and that pathway between the brain and my lungs is restored. Did he heal me? No. Did the prayers of my mom and my mom's friends and families heal me? In a way, because they led to the answer. And what they found was the cause. And what they did is they removed the interference. I'm no healer. That chiropractor is no healer. What we are tools and instruments for God to use to remove the interference from people's spines, to restore the connection between the intelligence that God placed in all of our bodies. Every single one of us is animated and fearfully and wonderfully made, aren't we?
Yes. Amen.
Yeah, I mean, he counts the number of hairs on our head. 2 cells brought together in utero, become this living, loving, thinking clay. 36 trillion cells later that have over 380 trillion viruses all throughout our body that keeps us healthy, that have over 400 trillion bacteria that help keep us healthy and our immune system's running high. We live in this environment, and we do so because of an intelligent creator and an intelligent design. And that default state is health. When God created us in the garden, he created an environment for us to live in for eternity, to be sustained with. But we've fallen so far from that garden, haven't we? First we eat the forbidden fruit. We take that decision that, our destinies into our own hand, for better, really for worse, right? Really for worse. And then from there, we still continue to turn away from God, taking our destinies into our own hand over and over. Abel and Cain and, all these different decisions made, veering us off of God's intended path to the point where we get to the flood. And after the flood, we lose this environment that sustains life for even as much as 960, 970 years almost, with so many different of our patriarchs. And now God says we're limited to 120 years. I don't know where after that he said we're limited to 78 years. The average life expectancy in the United States right now is 78 years. Why? Because we've got so much interference between the nervous system, the intelligence inside the nervous system, and these organ cells and tissues outside. And so it really comes down to 5 basic components. Number 1, your mindset about this. If you think your health is feeling good and is going to come from a pill or come from the outside in, I'm sorry, you're just falling in with culture. And when you do the same thing everybody else does, you're going to end up living your life the same way with the same results that everybody else gets, which right now is 78 years of average life expectancy and trending downwards. We're dying younger and younger. We have to change that. And it starts with knowing what's going on. So that starts in the nervous system, respecting that intelligence that God put there to animate and control us. That intelligence will never harm you. Always works in your best interest. Some people even call it God. I'm not that much of a philosopher. I'm not going to get into that argument tonight. But really, God's responsible for it, right? Just like he created everything with order and his special design and purpose, he created us with that special purpose and design. He designed this for health. Yes. To promote us and heal us and keep us going. So respecting that inside there, respecting this system that God designed to surround and protect the spine, the spinal column, every single vertebra in their right alignment. Scoliosis reduces your life expectancy by how long? 14 to 20 years. That's like having type 2 diabetes. We don't want that in there. We want to have a straight spine. We want these 3 curves from the side. When we have that, we're healthy. When we don't have that, we get sick. The next thing that we need to pay attention to is nutrition. Why? Because this thing is replacing itself every 15 to 20 years. Your stomach lining every 3 days, your small intestinal lining every 5 days, your heart and lungs every 5 to 10 years, your bones and your nervous system every 15 to 20 years. So if you live to the age of 80, how many times have you replaced yourself at least? 5 times at least you've replaced yourself. How do you replace yourself? Well, the intelligence can do it, but there's certain nutrients that you need to get from the outside to do that. That's why God created us in the garden, to take care of the garden, to sustain it so it can sustain us. Right? But how far have we gone away from dwelling in that garden? How many of us even know how to garden? Heck, I lived in Atlanta for over a decade. There are spots in Atlanta where you ask a kid where food comes from, and they'll tell you it's the grocery store or McDonald's.
Yes.
They call these places food deserts because the kids don't realize that there are things like farms that grow food, or groves where trees and orchards, sprout fruit and vegetables and good sustaining foods. We don't even know what real meat is anymore. So we're going to get into all that tonight, but there's two other categories that if I didn't mention, it would not be good for you, because what you don't know can kill you, can make you sicker, can lead to an early death. You may not know this, but we have a genetic requirement for exercise and movement. God said to work the ground, right? God said to take care of the garden. You don't do that by sitting on the couch, clicking your mouse, right? No, we're actually required movement. In the 1980s, there were a group of scientists that won a Nobel Prize for research showing that movement is life. Movement allows your brain to create ATP and energy, and when you don't have that movement, your brain suffers, and it dies early because it's not getting that input back up. So you need movement, you need exercise. Cultures that live the longest, guess where they live? You think they live in the prairie, in the valley where everything's flat? They live on the mountainsides. They garden their own foods and vegetables. They're working every single day, going up and down the hill. They live over 90, over 100 years old in some cases. We call these blue zones. Look it up. Look up the blue zones. Look at where these people are living. Look at what foods they eat. Look at how they exercise. And then lastly, look at how their exposures are to different toxins in the environment, right? Because if you poison yourself, are you going to stay healthy? No. Doesn't matter how much clean food you eat, how much you exercise, how much you get your spine adjusted, you can't poison yourself. But we're poisoning ourselves every single day with known carcinogens coming in our pesticides and herbicides, things that we spray around our house, that we let our children play around because we just think, oh, it's not that bad. It's just a little bit of exposure. But it builds up and it builds up and it builds up and it builds up, and eventually it spills over into these symptoms. And then we wonder why we have more autoimmune diseases than ever before in the history of the world. It's not because we're living longer. We wonder why we've got all this arthritis. It's not because we're living longer. Our doctors will tell us it's because we're old. Our doctors will tell us it's because of our genetics. Our doctors will tell us it's because we eat too much fat, too much meat. And I'm here to expose some of those myths tonight. So let's dive into some of these. Because really, if you want to know about the nervous system, these are some of the most common signs of subluxation. Subluxation being any interference in the expression of health through the nervous system. So asthma, headaches, menstrual problems, high blood pressure, depression, insomnia, numbness and tingling, neck pain, dizziness, fatigue, acid reflux, sciatica, or low back pain. If you're dealing with any of those, call our office, 531-289-7100, and we'll set you up with a nervous system evaluation. We'll give you our largest discount. We'll give you 60% off so that you can get your nervous system checked, so that we can begin to get to the cause of why you're dealing with any of these problems. But tonight's not about the nervous system. Tonight's about what the nervous system needs. And so it starts with breaking through some mental barriers when it comes to proper nutrition. And number one is the conflicting information and misinformation that's out there. Now, I'm sorry, but the longer you've been on this earth, the more misinformation and conflicting information, especially when it comes to nutrition, you've been exposed to. It's not your fault. There's a lot of forces at work. And a lot of them are good-hearted individuals really looking to make people healthier. But wrong information is still wrong information, no matter how well-intentioned it is. So I'm going to give you the best information I know how, but when we don't know, when the research is incomplete, where do we default back to? The scripture, to God's word, to God's intended plan. That's our default. If you want to know what the best sweetener is out there, it's probably a naturally occurring sweetener that's protected by fiber. You want to know what the best fat is? It's probably the naturally occurring fat that's found in the food that God created, not extracted. You want to know what the best source of protein is? Probably the one that's walking around eating the things that God created it to eat in the way that he created it to eat them, right? Yeah. Or swimming around, right? Fish. Yes. The Israelis, they lived on this little seaside where they got fish all the time. Jesus was fishing with a bunch of fishermen all the time. Eat the way Jesus ate, you'll be a little healthier. Eat the bread Jesus ate, you'll be a little bit healthier. Or Ezekiel, right? Got some Ezekiel bread fanatics in the house? Maybe a little bit. So, not wanting to feel deprived, right? I specifically, probably more so than this room, I'm a little younger than you guys. I grew up on pizza and ice cream and hot dogs, and I know they've had this stuff forever, but the stuff I have is way more processed than the stuff that was originally developed in Italy. right? You know, the first ice cream, a lot different than the ice cream that we're eating now, right? And if we make this stuff and we eat real foods and we combine it the right way, I cook pizza and ice cream and hot dogs for my family all the time. But it's real pizza and ice cream and hot dogs, as opposed to the stuff that you're getting, you know, for 99 cents, you know, at the ball, well, probably not at the ball game, but yeah, not for that price. So yeah, not wanting to feel deprived. We don't want to feel deprived. Short-lived goals versus values. Your goal is to lose 10 pounds. There's nothing wrong with losing 10 pounds, not unless you're, you know, 5'10", 110 pounds, then that would be 10 pounds way too much. Yes. But, you know, that's a short-term goal. Even if you need to lose the 10 pounds, why are you trying to lose the 10 pounds? That's important. Why you do anything is the most important thing that you do. You have to determine that why ahead of time. Budget concerns. It costs too much. Most people, you know, aren't interested in eating healthier if it costs too much of their budget. Now that's really a misguided way of thinking, because what's the #1 cause of bankruptcy in the United States today? It's healthcare costs. Yeah, medicine, the medical system. #1 cause of bankruptcy, almost 2/3 of bankruptcies are because of healthcare costs. And 85% of those people had health insurance. It had nothing to do with the food that they were eating, but it had everything to do with the food that they were eating, right? Yes. Because we know from the research that 95% of these are lifestyle preventable if you address them early enough, in the right way. And so we want to get into that. Unsustainable diets, right? You can eat one donut a day and nothing else and lose weight. I'm not depriving you of a diet. Are you going to be sustained and healthy on that diet long term? No, there's the grapefruit diet. Grapefruit's a little healthier than a donut. Yes. But if all you eat is one grapefruit a day, is that going to sustain you for life? No, there are more requirements than that. So eating a calorie deprivation diet, or basically a starvation diet, may help with short-term goals. Remember those short-term goals? But it's not going to end up in the right place long run. And then past failures. The ways that we've struggled in the past ultimately will determine our actions in the future. And so we have to overcome those. If I went on the keto diet, you know, 5 years ago, before it was even popular, I struggled and I failed. Does it mean that the keto diet's bad? Does it mean the keto diet doesn't work? No, and some of you might be out there and you say, well, I was right there with you, Dr. J. It failed. It must not work, or at least it's not for me. But guess what I found out in the interim? I may have been on the keto diet, but I'm dairy sensitive, if not dairy allergic. I am gluten sensitive, if not gluten allergic. Maybe the keto diet doesn't have gluten in it at all, but it sure as heck has a ton of full-fat dairy. I was going to struggle if I was going to consume dairy, whatever diet I was on. And so we need to identify some of those food sensitivities. So our past failures should not necessarily reject full lines of thinking from our belief system and from our future actions, but they should inform us and educate us and help guide our decision-making process. So let's get into this. So nutrition self-check. How important is nutrition to you? And I don't need you guys to respond, but absolutely. I want you guys to look at your checkbook. Look at your budget. How much time, how much money are you investing in your nutrition? That'll tell you how important it is. If you fall in line with the average American on spending and time prepared for food, which for some people is just the amount of time you spend in the drive-through line, right? Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or Wendy's, that's probably not enough time. You'll spend more money there, right? But that's not a quality investment in your food. All the research agrees, even though there's not enough of it as far as nutrition, all the research agrees. If you prepare your own food at home, you're healthier than people that don't prepare their own food at home. Yeah, you can do everything wrong. If you're making your own food at home, you get less sugar, you get less bad fats, you get less toxins, you get less inflammation. You are healthier just by preparing your own food at home. So we can nitpick on this, absolutely. But if we don't get into this and we don't make sure that we're making the right choices on this, we can actually still shoot ourselves in the foot. So let's get into it. The 3 major dangers of this standard American diet, or like I like to call it, the SAD diet, standard American diet, the apt acronym, because it's so bad. Number 1, we get too much sugar. How much does the average American consume on a daily basis? about 166 pounds of glucose every single year, and about another 66 pounds of fructose every single year. And my numbers could be off slightly, but it averages out to about 260 pounds of sugar a year. 260 pounds, and that doesn't even add in the artificial sweeteners that we use to replace this sometimes. And if you do the math, you break that up day by day, that's about 2/3 pound of sugar a day. Where's that coming from? Well, about 1/3 of it is from sweetened drinks. If you're sweetening your beverages at all, that's about 1/3 of it. Most of the rest is being added to your food. Not the food that you think. This is not candy and sweet tarts and all the stuff that we think of as sweet. It's being added to just our regular everyday food, our canned soups, our tomato sauces. The things that come pre-made for us, all we have to do is heat it up. That's where most of this is coming in. And there's a lot of reasons for it, but ultimately it adds up to creating inflammation. Number 2 is too many toxins. It's estimated right now that we consume about 150 pounds of pesticides every single year, many of which are known carcinogens. But you may say, oh, but Dr. Jake, I wash all those off. That just leads me back to the science experiment that I performed in grade school. I stuck a stalk of celery in a glass of water, added a couple of drops of red food dye, and when I woke up in the morning, what color was the celery? Red. Then I tried to wash off all that red. It wasn't because it stains too deep, it's because the fruits and vegetables, they absorb it through the water. It sucks it in. And the same thing is true of pesticides. You can't wash them all off. And so it's important to know which foods have the most pesticides. Number 3 is not enough good fats. And we'll get into what fats are good and what fats are bad. But when you have too many bad fats, it actually creates inflammation in your diet, in your body. And ultimately, inflammation is at the root of every modern disease that kills Americans. So, 5 steps to clean this up. Number 1, we have to clean up our carbohydrate consumption. The carbs that we should be eating are whole. Number 2, we have to fix our fats. When we fix our fats, we get a proper ratio of the good, healthy fats in our body that reduces inflammation naturally. Number 3, we have to perfect our proteins. Our protein sources should be coming from natural sources and not processed artificial sources. Number 4, we trash the toxins. We know which sources have the most toxins. And then number 5, we have to avoid our allergens and sensitivities. If you don't know about an allergy or sensitivity and you have it, is it any less dangerous? No, it's more dangerous. What are the most common ones? Well, you've got your dairy and you've got your gluten. That covers most Americans. In fact, worldwide, 95% of the world is lactose intolerant, with an exception being Northern Europeans and subsections of Africa and the Middle East. So, yeah, more white Americans can get away with this, but if you happen to be from Asia or from other parts of Africa or other parts of the Far East or the Middle East, when you eat the standard American diet, you eat my plate, you could be setting yourself up for failure. It's estimated that 80% of Americans are sensitive to gluten. And then most wheat products are sprayed with Roundup. The Roundup Ready, sprayed with Roundup, and Roundup is a known carcinogen. So it may not be that you're gluten sensitive, it may be that you're actually poison sensitive, because it doesn't matter how much poison you consume, poison is always bad for you, right? It may not kill you right away, but slowly over time, it decreases your overall function. We're looking for function, remember? Yeah. We don't want to suppress that function if we want to be healthy. So, myth number 1, I have bad genes. My parents were sick, I'm going to be sick. My mom had heart disease, my dad had heart disease, my grandpa had heart disease, my great-grandpa had heart disease. I'm destined to get heart disease. And yes, while your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents all having the same condition does set you up for failure, it does not guarantee your failure. Just like a loaded gun cannot in and of itself kill you, if we pull that trigger while it's pointed at you, it absolutely has that potential, right? So if you have the genetic predisposition to cancer, to heart disease, to Alzheimer's or dementia, all it means is that you need to take more drastic action than someone who doesn't have those things. if you want to live the life that God has intended. And it's because of this concept, really, hypothesis, not quite strong enough, theory or theorem, that of epigenetics. So there's the theory of genetics, that our genes control our destiny, and then there's the theory of epigenetics, which says your genes may control some of these outcomes, but it's the environment surrounding the gene that controls the gene. And if we surround the gene in the right environment, it'll respond appropriately. Why? Because of the intelligence that's inside of it. And so, right, if we dehydrate the environment a gene's in, it'll die of dehydration. That's a genetic predisposition that we all have, right? We die of thirst. We die of dehydration. If we rehydrate that before we die, before that cell dies, the cell gets life. But then it learns what it was like to live in a dehydrated environment, and so it adapts to require less water. Same thing in a hypoxic environment, low oxygen environment. It adapts to require less oxygen. Does it mean it's a healthier cell? No, it's an adapted cell. And genetically, if we procreate in that environment, now we pass on that genetic code and that genetic information to our children. And if they don't adapt and respond appropriately, they pass that on to their children as well. It doesn't mean it's set in stone. You know, you could, biblically, you might even be able to draw out generational curses from this idea. What our parents do absolutely matter and interpret itself in how we do and how we live our lives. We see that over and over again, time and time again, just behaviorally. If our parents were alcoholics, we have a predisposition to alcoholism. It doesn't mean that you're an alcoholic. You still have to make those choices for yourself. It doesn't mean that you're a sugar addict. You still have to make those choices for yourself. And so genes are absolutely not your destiny. But if you're not careful, they can easily become your destiny. So it really does. It comes down to inflammation. The Journal of Pharmaceutical Research, remember, they said that 90% of cancers, at least 90% of cancers, are lifestyle preventable, oftentimes reversible, but it comes from inflammation. Inflammation is a good thing in short bursts. It's actually your immune system at work. If you twist your ankle, sprain your ankle, it swells up. That's inflammation. That inflammation allows for white and red blood cells to flow into that area and your body to heal that area faster. Now, if you don't stop walking on it, right? Mm-hmm. If you take a painkiller, you put a brace on it, and you keep walking on it, keep playing basketball, keep doing all the same things on that damaged joint that's ever done. Now you've gone from acute inflammation to chronic inflammation, and those white blood cells and red blood cells constantly going there actually start to eat away the joint and make it more likely that you end up injuring it long term. This is a problem that a lot of professional athletes have. They injure their joints over and over. They pop an ibuprofen and just to numb the pain, and they keep playing, and they end up with severely damaged joints with severe health issues resulting long term. But they make a lot of money in the short term, right? Mm-hmm. They enjoy themselves in the short term. They don't have to deal with the pain in the short term. But in the long term, they end up worse. Now, if we take that same inflammation, let's say you eat too much sugar. Sugar results in inflammation in the gut, in the bloodstream. We keep eating too much sugar. Keep eating too much sugar. Now we've got a chronic inflammation in the gut, and we end up with colitis, which is inflammation in your gut. Right? Remember the Latin term for inflammation in your gut? So what do we have to do if we want to get rid of the colitis? Do we have to take the colon pill or attack the bacteria that God placed there to keep us healthy with an antibiotic? Or do we need to reduce the cause of the inflammation in the first place? So sugar absolutely causes inflammation, and it elevates our glucose and insulin, which both make us want more sugar. Mm-hmm. It adds more stress, which also makes us want more sugar. Damaged fats make us more inflamed. Toxins make us more inflamed. Sensitivities and allergens, when you continue to consume them, right? If I keep eating too much dairy, guess what? I don't just get inflamed in my gut. I start getting bloody stool. That's a bad problem. If you get too much bloody stool, what starts developing? Polyps. What are polyps? Precancerous lesions. If you leave polyps there, what does it become? Not colitis, not polyps, it becomes cancer. And if I don't get to the cause, though, doesn't matter how many times I cut the polyps out. Doesn't matter how much time I cut the cancer out of the colon. Doesn't matter how much I treat that colon cancer, I still have to get back to the cause, right? We go back to the causes of that inflammation. So we have to establish a value system. Over 90% of those diseases are caused by the lifestyle habits. We have to set a good example with this. Our friends and family depend on us living that good example. We may be swimming against the current, but they depend on us swimming against the current for us to be healthy and for them to start having the strength to make those healthy decisions. If I tell my daughter to wash her hands, she's 2. She doesn't want to wash her hands. If I tell my son and my daughter to go wash their hands and my son says no, am I ever getting my daughter to wash her hands?
No.
But if my son says yes, I'll wash my hands. Then what's the funnest thing in the world to my daughter? To wash her hands. So we have to create this positive peer pressure, this culture of doing the right thing if we're actually going to get healthy. Another myth, myth number 2, counting calories is an effective method of healthy nutrition. And you'll see this over and over again. A low-calorie diet is effective at managing chronic obesity or diabetes or heart disease. And while there is some truth in there, if all I do is consume the Twinkie instead of the almonds, am I going to get healthier? No, no world. Even though the Twinkie only has 150 calories and the almonds have 153, I can burn that Twinkie off faster, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe. If I do the right amount of exercise, I'll burn this off and it'll be healthier, right? What has more nutrients in it? What has more of those building blocks that I need? It's the almonds, the real food, not the processed food, not the high sugar food, not the food that has the bad fats in it. It's not about the calories. Calories are just units of energy. Calories do not tell me the health of the food, it just tells me how much energy I'm going to get out of it. If I consume these, I'm getting magnesium, I'm getting B vitamins, I'm getting some selenium. Those are important, really not just important, they're essential. My body requires them from the outside in order to create those right building blocks. And so I need those on a daily basis. And we see that over and over again. We've actually reduced the amount of fats because they're so calorie rich, and in their place, because you reduce fats from a food item, it tastes like what? Cardboard. Mm-hmm. So what do you have to do when you take fat out? Add sugar in. Because sugar has 1/3 less calories in it per gram, I can add more sugar in, make it taste better, actually activate a center in my brain that makes it addictive. So now people want to buy the food item I've created more frequently because now I'm addicted. Why does low-fat ice cream taste good? Mm-hmm. Because it's got so much sugar in it. Look at it the next time you're in the store. How much more sugar does the low-fat ice cream have in it than the full-fat ice cream? Doesn't mean that full-fat ice cream is better for you. It's just lower in sugar. Still needs to have healthy fat. Is there anything worse than sugar? Yeah, artificial sweeteners. So Splenda in particular, we see that it actually can attack the microbiome and attack the good bacteria in there that make up your immune system. But really, any artificial sweetener tricks your body into thinking that there's sugar there without actually giving it the sugar. So now it creates the environment to absorb sugar without actually having that component there. And then you're artificially high in insulin. But you've got low blood sugar or normal blood sugar. That still leads to diabetes. That still creates inflammation. That still builds up belly fat. So it's not a healthy alternative. It actually can create long-term health issues. We see that there are correlations between this and a lot of chronic health conditions, like learning disabilities, like brain disorders. This is not good. We need to make sure that we're getting healthy sweeteners. What is a healthy alternative? Something that's natural and low glycemic, something like stevia, something like monk fruit. Those are healthier sweeteners. Can you still overdo them? Absolutely. They still have a glycemic index. They still have an insulin effect and response, but we're not going to damage our bodies in quite the same way when we take something like the stevia plant that's 500 times sweeter than sugar in the same amount. Yeah. So better for you, safer for you. So another myth, eating fat makes you fat. Now, intuitively, it might make sense. If you have a gram of fat that has 9 calories in it, and a gram of sugar that has 3 calories in it, that if you eat more fat, you're going to get fatter because you can't burn off the excess calories. And that, in a sense, is true. But the thing about fat is it fills you up. And when you're full, you don't actually crave more fat. The thing about sugar is, doesn't matter how much you eat, it never fills you up. It stimulates the same pleasure centers in your brain as cocaine and heroin consumption does. And it makes you want more. And you develop a sweet tooth. And you consume more and more to the point where you're like me and you buy the big Sam's Club size Jelly Belly canister and you eat that on a road trip from Atlanta to Michigan all in a single sitting because you like sweet things in your mouth to help keep you awake. Or you're like a lot of the truck drivers out there that go into the gas stations with their 72-ounce refillable cup because all they have to do is buy it once and they're going to make it until they need to refill their tank again. They consume 4 or 5 of these in a day. It's diabetes. Yeah. It does this over and over. Fat doesn't make you fat. Excess calories may make you fat, but really it's way more about your hormones. Things like insulin, things like leptin, absolutely control this more. So it really does come down to inflammation, because inflammation does wreck these bad fats. Bad fats are not necessarily, these what do we call them? The saturated. Mm-hmm. Saturated fats are not inherently bad for you. In fact, most of breast milk is saturated fat. If saturated fat was bad for you, God really made a mistake with breast milk, didn't he? Yeah. No, it's actually essential for brain development. Bad fats are those synthetic and denatured fats. So a naturally occurring fat is a healthy fat, something that's not altered by man, that God designed for our consumption. So good examples first. Extra virgin olive oil. How hard is it to squeeze olive oil out of an olive? Not hard, you just step on it, right? How about avocados and avocado oil? How hard is it to get fat out of an avocado? Not hard, you just step on it. Squeeze it. Coconut and coconut oil. It just seeps right out of the coconut, right? You don't even have to squeeze it for it to come out. Raw nuts and seeds in those oils. It just seeps right out, right? You ever hold a thing of peanuts in your hand? You feel the grease coming off. Not necessarily because they deep fried them, right? Real butter. Now, I can't do real butter because I'm dairy sensitive, maybe dairy allergic. But if you're not dairy sensitive, if you don't have that lactose intolerance, that real butter can absolutely be a great source of healthy, saturated and unsaturated. Raw cheese and yogurt. Again, I can't do it, but maybe you can. Get those whole fat. Grass-fed meats, eggs, whole milks, they're coming with the right ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids. Fatty fish, you want a good source of omega-3 fatty acids? These are essential fatty acids, by the way. Essential meaning that you need them in order to build you back up. Almost 70% of your nervous system is fat. And if you're not getting them from your diet, you're not getting them, which means that your nervous system suffers. What are the bad fats? Anything that's processed, right? So how about some hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated oils? How about cotton? Is cotton a food product? No, so it is the FDA regulated like a food product. No, so it actually is allowed to be sprayed with pesticides that are not safe for human consumption. So cottonseed oil, where do you find that? On your buttered popcorn at the movie theater. Yeah, not good for you. Soybean oil. Soybean is one of the most genetically modified foods on the planet. Over 90% of soy products are genetically modified, which is not necessarily a bad thing. The people in the labs that are genetically modifying these things, but what do genetically modifieds do better than anything else? They hold more pesticides and herbicides without killing the plant, which means that you're giving yourself more exposure to these things that are bad for you. Plus, to get fat out of a soybean requires a lot of processing, so it's denatured. Vegetables, are they inherently high in fat? No, so you have to process them a lot in order to get fat out of it. Trans fats. These are synthetic fats, something like margarine, synthetic butters. If you can't believe it's not butter, don't eat it, because it's not going to be good for you. It's a synthetic product. Oftentimes, these are coming from a petroleum-based product. They remove certain components of it to make it more safely consumable, but it's 1 or 2 carbon chains away from basically being plastic. So we don't want to be consuming those trans fats. In fact, trans fats have been removed from the food supply by the FDA. Not removed in that you can't still buy them, removed in that you cannot still produce them. So if they're still on the shelves from when they were still allowed by the FDA, they're not going to come in and take them off. So you have to be on the lookout. Rancid vegetable oils, something like corn oil. Is corn high or naturally have a high level of fat in it? Absolutely not. Canola oil. Anybody know what a canola seed looks like? No, because there's no such thing as a canola seed. It actually stands for Canadian oil low acid and comes from a small seed called a rape seed. Try marketing that. Buy some of my rapeseed oil. Yeah, no, it's not going to happen. But it's highly denatured and rancid by the time it gets into that bottle. Those labeled as simply vegetable oil. It's found in practically every bread, cracker, cookie, and boxed food. So we have to get back to those good fats. We have to consume those in healthy ratios. Another myth, fat in meats causes heart disease, cancer, osteoporosis, and kidney disease. So this is research that actually caused the World Health Organization to say that your red meats are just as or in the same class of carcinogens as cigarettes. So carcinogenic, meaning it causes cancer. Now the research is not wrong, but all the research that they did was on conventionally raised meats. And by conventionally, I don't mean the way that God designed, I mean the way that our culture and society have chosen to raise meats for the production and assembly of more meat-related products. And so what are they feeding these cows? What are they feeding these pigs? What are they feeding? Well, corn, food pellets that are wheat and corn and soy based, have synthetic vitamins put in there designed to fatten them up as quickly as possible. Now, they also don't want them to get sick, and so they're given antibiotics as necessary, right? But guess where 80% of the antibiotic consumption comes in the United States right now? From meat packing, from cattle raising. And so when you consume animal products that have a ton of antibiotics in them, what are you basically consuming? Antibiotics. And were cows ever designed to eat corn pellets? No. Cows, wild cows, bison, buffalo, they grazed on grassy pastures. They ate leaves. They don't eat corn. Oh, they might find an occasional head of corn wandering out there, but they don't stay in a cornfield forever. And it's like a candy floor. If you feed a 2-year-old candy, what does he become? Fat, sick, and nearly dead. What happens to a cow when you feed it all that junk? It becomes fat, sick, requiring medication to get it to market so that you and I can consume our 99-cent cheeseburger. Or maybe we spend a little bit more on the cheeseburger, but if it's coming from a synthetically or conventionally raised source, it's going to create inflammation. And again, inflammation is the main cause of what? Cancer. And is the main cause of oxidation of cholesterol, which is the main cause of heart disease. Almost 2/3 of death. Right there. Just because of inflammation. Problems with conventional meat. Another major problem with this is when you consume conventional meat, you get a huge dosage of omega-6 fatty acids. Now, that wouldn't be a problem if you were also getting the same or slightly less in omega-3 fatty acids, but it's a 17-to-1 ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s in conventional beef. But in grass-fed beef, it's 2-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3. Guess what the ratio should be in the human body? 2-to-1 or 1-to-1. And so when we consume a large amount of conventionally raised beef, or we consume these fish that are raised on a farm being fed the same food pellets that they would find all over the ocean, right? Food pellets just laying everywhere, being dumped into them. No, they're designed to eat what's in the ocean naturally. You get that wrong ratio of omega-6s and omega-3s. Plus, on top of it, most of the corn, most of those food pellets that they're getting are what? Genetically modified sources, meaning that they have a higher concentration of pesticides, meaning that when you consume these food products, you're getting a higher ratio of pesticide than you would even from eating the most heavily sprayed pesticide food. And so what's the most important thing to eat organic or at least natural, grass-fed, free-range? Meat. More so than even our vegetables and our fruits. Because you cannot spray enough pesticides on these things to consume as much as you're getting with your meat. So you change your animal products first. You should be aiming for grass-fed beef and dairy products. You should be looking for free-range chicken. You should be looking for wild-caught fish and a natural source of dairy. Those are the first thing. If you're budget conscious, if you only have one thing that you can change in everything I talk about today, start with your meats first, because you're going to get less hormones, you're going to get less antibiotics, you're going to get less pesticides, and you're going to get better sources of healthy fat and ultimately a healthier source of protein. If you cannot afford to change your meat products, give up meat. Adam and Eve in most of history until the flood did not eat meat at all. Then afterwards, God said we could eat meat, but it's not necessary. Daniel gave it up for the Daniel diet. Yeah. What did he do? He got healthier. Doesn't mean that we need it just because God allows it, right? Just because God told Peter he could eat the unclean meats, which I still think is more of just an interpretation. Yeah. He was giving him an example, something that he could interpret to going to the Gentiles and ministering to us, and allowing us to come to Christ. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily healthier. That the intention was the garden. We shouldn't be consuming as much meat and animal products as we are. Myth: we need 5 to 8 servings of grains every day for a healthy diet. Wait a second, Dr. Jake. Didn't you just say we didn't eat meat? Where are we going to get all these other calories from? And what about my fiber? Where am I going to get fiber from? What do you think has more fiber in it? Your bread or a stalk of celery or kale? Yeah, your fiber comes from your vegetables, not your grains. And this is something that I thought wouldn't be out there anymore, but you look at some of these American Heart Organization, the FDA and the ADA and the USDA, and what their recommendations are, my plate or the food pyramid, and say 5 to 8 servings of grains every day. Make half of your whole grains whole, or make half of your grains whole. It's like, what do grains turn to in your mouth? Sugar. And they turn to sugar in your mouth because of this enzyme that's in everybody's mouth called salivary amylase. We all have it. As soon as grain hits your mouth, it turns to sugar. Dr. Oz did a mini experiment on his TV show, live. He had 5 people eat a slice of whole grain bread. He had 5 people eat a Snickers bar. They tested their blood sugar afterwards. Who had the higher blood sugar? The whole grain bread. Why? Because it turns to sugar in your mouth. And so we cannot do that and expect to be healthy. And then we have a huge portion of the population that's proven to be gluten sensitive. All 3 of my children are to some degree gluten sensitive. Probably because I set them up for that. Yeah, it comes from the parents, right? And then we give them these things, and then the foods, the grains that we give them are covered in pesticides and loaded with sugars, right? Practically every bread has an artificial sweetener and a bad fat in it. And we expect them to respond well to something that comes from the lectin family that attacks the gut lining. Inherently, that's its job. It doesn't work. And so, yeah, no, that's a huge myth. Another myth: cholesterol causes heart disease. Your dietary cholesterol has far less of an impact on your overall cholesterol than you've ever been told. In fact, there are studies out there that suggest that has 0 effect on your cholesterol whatsoever. that you can eat whatever cholesterol you want, and it will not affect your blood cholesterol. Why? Most of your cholesterol is produced in your liver in response to damage. Cholesterol has multiple jobs in your body. It's the backbone of every hormone in your body. It's responsible for wound healing. If you cut your hand, and I don't have any wounds on my hand right now, I need to wrestle with my kids a little more, obviously. But yeah, I get these little cuts and nicks on my hands all the time just because I cook and I clean, I play with the kids, I adjust all the time, I'm reaching my hands in places all over the place. What is the scab that forms on there made of? Mostly cholesterol. Yeah, no kidding. You need that cholesterol. But it's the liver that produces it. Over 90% of what's in your bloodstream is coming directly from your liver in response to wounds. Now, your wounds don't have to be on the outside, right? Because if you have inflammation in your bloodstream, it attacks the blood vessels on the inside. So what builds up in those blood vessels? Plaque, made mostly of cholesterol. And then if the inflammation doesn't come down, what builds up more in the blood vessels? More plaque. And if the inflammation doesn't come down because you keep eating sugar, you keep eating bad fats, you keep exposing yourself to pesticides and allergens and food sensitivities, now eventually this blocks it off so much that your heart is not getting enough oxygen, not getting enough blood to certain areas. It literally dies in a certain spot, and you have a myocardial infarction, heart attack, which first-time heart attacks in the United States, 50% survival rate. Thank God when we do survive them. Thank God that that's the best survival rate in the world, and our medical professionals do that for us. But it's not because you ate an egg for breakfast. Cholesterol, dietarily, doesn't cause high cholesterol. Your inflammation. You need cholesterol. You need it for so many different processes. If you're going to be healthy, you need cholesterol. Cholesterol lines your brain. If you don't have enough cholesterol in your brain, guess what it makes you at higher risk for? Alzheimer's disease and dementia. Absolutely. So if you want Alzheimer's disease and dementia, what should you cut out of your diet? What should you take? Maybe an artificial cholesterol reducer? Maybe. The myth. The FDA and the USDA effectively protect the general public from dangerous products. I mean, our country allows more synthetic pesticides and herbicides than any other country in the world, except for maybe like Russia. And don't take offense, Russians that are watching. I know, dark web. I could get, mafia. But yeah, we consume how many pounds of pesticides did I say? 150 pounds. And the list of approved pesticides is over 200 long. Guess what the list in Europe is? 7. So even if those 7 aren't inherently safe, at least they're not getting the 193 plus other ones that may or may not be safe because they've been recently patented and only tested for safety for the last year. How long has glyphosate, Roundup, been considered a safe weed killer? Decades. How much money did they lose in the last 2 years in lawsuits because their product causes stomach cancer? Billions. So should we be spraying Roundup on stuff? No. Should we be consuming glyphosate? No. Probably not. And the FDA and the USDA have not banned it yet. You can still find it in the not the grocery store. I hope not the grocery store. No, but maybe the hardware store. Yeah. Probably not a good product for us to be spraying on stuff. What are the most toxic foods? Well, they're the ones that are genetically modified to receive more pesticides. They're the ones that are sprayed with the most pesticides. They have the most dangerous additives, the most hormones and antibiotics. These are going to be your processed foods. Processed foods have more of these in them. But what if we're buying real whole foods? What if we actually want to eat real foods? Well, we have to look at the foods that have the most pesticides sprayed on. That's your dirty dust. the EWG, the Environmental Working Group, they come out with a list every single year that explains which foods have the most pesticides on them. They call it the Dirty Dozen. They also come out with a list that has the top 15 foods that have the least amount of pesticides sprayed on. And so a budgetary tool that I use is I make sure that we buy anything that's on the Dirty Dozen organic. And then because I don't have all the money in the world to spend on all the things in the world, I don't buy the Clean 15 organic unless it's a competitive price because it has less pesticide. And really, it's more important that I get my meat products clean, and those are way more expensive. And so that's where I invest my money. Myth: eating healthy is boring, tasteless, and hard to do. Now, oftentimes, and we can't do this right now, I will have food samples of good, healthy, clean food that's easy to make. Something like a chia seed pudding takes 5 minutes. Something like a smoothie takes maybe less than 5 minutes if you do it right. You know, you can make a healthy omelet 5 minutes or less if you do it right. It's about the intention that you put behind it. I've become a better chef by cooking with real foods than I ever was by just sticking something in the microwave or the oven that was pre-prepared for me. And it makes such a difference in my quality of life. It's so fun. Then another one. I don't need to take supplements because I can get an adequate amount of everything I need from diet alone. It may have been true at one time. I believe that in the Garden of Eden, you didn't need to take a vitamin D3 capsule or a multivitamin to cover your needs. Maybe even after the flood, you didn't need it. But since even the 1930s, ahead of broccoli, right? So one of the most nutritious, cruciferous, cancer-fighting vegetables on the planet is 70% less nutrient dense than it was in the 1930s. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Since the 1970s, 30% less nutrient content in our food across calcium, vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin E. These are essential micronutrients that we need, and we're not getting enough of them or as much as we used to, and we're eating less vegetables and fruits than we ever were. The average American male right now consumes less than 1 serving of vegetables. And he probably thinks he's getting a serving of vegetables a day because he's getting corn, which is a grain, not a vegetable. Or tomatoes, which are a fruit and not a vegetable. So we have to supplement in our holes to fill our holes. And so this is what the quality of food affects nutrient content. Absolutely. Organic food has way more nutrients than conventional foods. We see that in the scientific studies over and over again. But really, these are the ones that were most deficient. 70% or more of Americans are deficient in one or multiple of these nutrients. That's calcium, that's vitamin D, specifically vitamin D3, iron, vitamin B12, folate, and magnesium. I supplement with every single one of these every single day. How do I get it in? Well, I try to get my calcium from green products, and I try to get my vitamin D3 from things like fish and seafood products. I try to get my iron from things like legumes and beans. I try to get my vitamin B12 from something like eggs or other healthy meats. I try to get my folate from something like asparagus, and I try to get my magnesium from avocado, but it's a lot, and I'm not perfect. There's no one ever lived this life perfectly except our Savior, right? We can't do this on our own. Sometimes we need a little help. And so that's where we come up with the next slide. Quality and pure supplement, our daily essentials packets. And what this is made up of is number one, probably the most important one. If you don't want to take this whole thing because you don't have the budget for all of the supplements, start with the multivitamin because it covers your bases. It has a little bit of each one of these things in it to help you out, and then some. So the women's multi actually has a women's health formula that helps with things like breast and reproductive health from a women's perspective. The men's formula actually has prostate health, men's reproductive health. Men's issues are dealt with here. And not from I'm going to treat this symptom or this disease by something that's supported in the research as being effective at treating that. No, I'm going to take what I know to be a deficiency and start covering that deficiency with real nutrients that actually work. It's estimated that of the products that are on the market right now, over 90% of them don't have what their label says they have. Why do I carry this line of supplements? Because it actually has what the label says in it, and it is actually bioavailable. If your supplement pays for commercials on television, it probably does not work. It probably does not have in it what it said it does. Amazon, they did a study on Amazon. The supplements that are being sold on Amazon, even the top ones, 90% of them didn't have what they said they did in them. So, do I want you to have high quality supplements? Yes. Do I need you to get them from me? No. Do I trust them when you don't get them from me? No. So I'd rather have you take mine. Because I trust it, because that's what I take, that's what I give my family. I wouldn't give my family, I wouldn't take for myself something that I know do. D3, how much vitamin D3 do we need on a daily basis? About 30 minutes fully exposed in the sunshine.
Yes.
Between the hours of 10 and 2.
You can't go outside.
But we can't go outside when it's 30 degrees without our shirt on, right?
So cold.
So cool. So instead, sometimes we have to supplement. And we need to supplement D3 in the presence of two things. Probiotics, specific strands of probiotics that allow vitamin D3 to be digested in the gut, and a healthy fat. So you shouldn't be consuming this on an empty stomach. It should come with something like coconut oil or fish oil or avocado or an egg. That's when it's going to be most digestible and absorbed. And these capsules come in 5,000 IU capsules. Now, during summer months, I take one. During winter months, I take two. Right now, it's recommended that you take two because everybody needs to keep their immune system functioning high. And vitamin D3 is one of the things that we've seen. If you can keep your blood serum level between 60 and 100 nanograms per deciliter, then your immune system is going to function higher. That level between 60 and 100 is shown in the research done at Creighton University, peer-reviewed and published, to reduce your risk of cancers by as much as 77%. Second most important vitamin on the list. Optimal omega. Guess what our ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids is in the United States of America? Between 17 to 1 and 30 to 1. What does it need to be? 2 to 1 or 1 to 1. So we've designed an omega that is 2 to 1. And then we need to be adding in foods that are rich in omega-3s. So your seafoods, your flaxseed, your chia seed are all rich in omega-3s. This is one that every American, unless they are purposefully supplementing to get there, is off in their ratio. One of the most necessary supplements. Magnesium. This is estimated that over 90% of Americans are deficient in magnesium. Now, most magnesium comes in the magnesium citrate form. And we sold that for a while, and it works. Problem is it has a laxative effect. Not all of us need a laxative. And so we've made the switch to one that's just as well supported in the research, just as digestible and absorbable, helps with things like sleep issues and nerve problems. When you see a deficiency, that also doesn't create a laxative effect. And that's the magnesium glyphosate. One that I highly recommend everybody take, another one I take every single day. And then your last one is going to be your B complex with the delayed release. Now this comes in these nice packets, all boxed up for you. If you go on a trip, however many days you go on that trip for is how many packets you need to pack with you, as opposed to sorting out from a bottle which one you take. Each of these combined, if you were to buy all the bottles of them, would cost you over $130. But all of this, a 30-day supply of all the supplements that I'm recommending everybody have as a baseline, is just $100. 30-day supply, so that's less than $3 a day for something that is ultimately going to help you stay healthier, give you the building blocks that you need. So today, though, if you text in, what are we going to text in, Rachel? Essentials. You text essentials to 531-289-7100. We're going to give you a 15% discount off of the Daily Essentials packet. 15%. So that's $84.99 for that packet. But just today. So you have to be watching today Monday, what is it, May 11th?
Yes.
And text that in right now to get that 15% off. You can pick it up in the office next time you come. So how do we fill those gaps nutritionally as best we can? Two ways. If you're healthy, if you're asymptomatic, you have no diagnoses, no problems, no conditions at all, you eat the way that God designed us to eat, which is basically this. If God made the food, eat it. If man made the food, you eat it. Don't eat the processed food, eat the real food. It's nutrition for healthy families. It's for health maintenance. It's for disease prevention. And ultimately, it helps you lose weight because nobody's eating this way. Nobody. But then there's those of us that are dealing with more advanced chronic health conditions. We need a little bit more help. We've had heart disease diagnosed, high blood pressure. We've got blood sugar issues. We've developed cancerous lesions on our body, whether from too much skin exposure or too much inflammation. Ultimately, we need to repair our hormones. We need to decrease inflammation and manage some of these disease conditions. We need accelerated weight loss because our obesity is setting us up for too much failure, and we need that complete health restoration. That's the advanced plan. So if the core plan is simply, if God made it, eat it. If man made it, leave it. The advanced plan breaks down to these three categories, these three basic changes. Number one, we have to cut out our sugars. We have to reduce it down to those low glycemic foods. That's going to be eliminating all your grains. It's going to mean eliminating all the processed sugars and sweeteners, eliminating all fruit except berries. Anything that ends in berry is safe. Grapefruit, unless it interacts with certain heart medications, and Granny Smith apples. Those are your safe fruits. Even healthy grains rapidly turn to sugar. Protein, we need to replace the conventional protein sources with a natural protein source. And then our fats, we remove the bad fats completely and we add in the good ones. We're not eliminating fats. We're not eliminating carbs. We're not eliminating proteins of any kind. This is not a macro-based diet. This is a nutrient-based diet, getting real foods in there, but it's for hormone repair. We get just those lower glycemic, naturally occurring carb sources. Your vegetables, you may want to limit your root vegetables, things like potatoes and sweet potatoes and beets and yams and carrots, to just before noon so that you're not setting up your hormones for failure. On the advanced plan, what do we avoid? This is actually an advanced plan cupcake.
Is it really?
It is.
Give me the rest.
Yeah, I believe I have. It's brilliant. You can make any food on the advanced plan. You just have to make it yourself. You have to know how to make it.
Yeah.
But foods containing processed carbohydrates and sugar, you have to cut that out. Foods containing sugar substitutes, cut those out. Foods containing trans fat, cut it. Foods containing fats that turn rancid, cut it. And say it with me, any type of highly processed food, cut it. When you cut those, you almost fall by default into the advanced plan. So what does that mean for shopping? Well, you have to plan out what you're going to eat. You don't have enough time in a night to just say, well, what do I want to have for dinner? You have to kind of think ahead and prepare for this ahead of time. When you go shopping, you take a list. You write out what you need for the meals that you want to prepare during the week. You keep the basics stocked. You know, something like a Costco membership is a good idea for something like this, because then you can get all those basics involved, store them in your deep freezer, and then you have them for when you need them. You spend more time planning and shopping than you do cooking ultimately. Use things like a crock pot or a pressure cooker to help get you there. You read your labels and you use the pesticide guide. What's the pesticide guide? The dirty dozen and the clean 15 list from the Environmental Working Group. So your label reading do's and don'ts. What do you want to look at? Well, number one, you want to look at not the front. The front tells you nothing. It tells you what they're trying to market to. They want to market you a diet food, what are they going to say? Low fat, sugar free. Does it mean that it's good for you? No, it means it's highly processed. So you go to the back, you look at the ingredients list. If it's more than 3 ingredients long, it better be trail mix. Right? Make sure it doesn't have any sugars in there. Make sure it doesn't have anything that turns the sugar. Make sure that it is whole, real foods in that list. Make sure there's no numbers in that list. The ingredients list is what matters there. What else do you want to look at? You want to look at added sugars and fiber. How many added sugars should it have in it? None. How much fiber should it have in it? It should have as much fiber as it can so that you're not consuming more than 2 grams of sugar in a serving. So how does that work out? Well, you just subtract the amount of carbohydrates from fiber. So total carbohydrates minus fiber. And that fiber is actually going to protect you from the sugar. And then an easy thing to do is just pick up that vegetable. You don't even have to look at the ingredients list, right?
Yes.
There's no label there. But you do want to check and see if it's from the Dirty Dozen or the Clean 15, right? And you also want to see if it's genetically modified. And there's a way to do that as well that I'll teach you about on our shopping tour. General healthy nutrition tips. Number 1, establish your big why. Why are you making these changes? Is it just to lose that weight so you can fit into the bikini? Probably not going to be a lasting nutritional change. Is it so that you can play with your grandkids on the beach? You might actually get some traction there. Why do you want to play with your grandkids on the beach? Because you love them and you want to create that relationship with them. Why do you want that relationship with them? Because you value relationship. Because God made you a relational person. And ultimately that is getting to the heart of why you're making a lasting decision, a lasting change. Start thinking of food as fuel and sustenance. We consume food as entertainment. Go to the movie theater. If you don't consume your popcorn, you didn't go to the movie theater right, did you? No, but that popcorn isn't real food. It's not real fuel. It's not real sustenance. Add more healthy, nutrient-dense options. And just an aside, I'm not anti-popcorn. I love popcorn. I just make my own. I make it with whole, real fats. Don't add any of the junk. Add healthy, nutrient-dense options. Real fruit. Healthy, nutrient-dense options. Things like spinach, things like kale, things like olives, things like, if you're not dairy sensitive, real cheese. Absolutely help with that. Spend time, take away the more unhealthy items and spend time planning and shopping. And then keep a food journal. If you want to know what you ate, write it down. Yeah, that's why we're giving these out. If you want one of these food journals, text journal to 531-289-7100 and we'll get you a digital copy of this tonight. And if you don't text that and you want to pick them up in the office, we've got a few left, but we're going to do a complimentary nutrition consult if you text the office journal tonight. You need to fill out the journal to do the nutrition consult. Next, what's the most important action step? The next one. The next action step. Do you know it all yet? I hope so. I hope you absorbed everything. I hope you wrote everything down and you just, it goes right in, stays there forever. You start taking action on every single step. That's not realistic. If you can take 1 or 2 or 3 things and start taking action on it tonight, you're going to be so much better off than if all you did was just listening. Start there. How do you know what those things are? Well, hopefully I gave you a good priority list tonight. If you haven't changed your meats yet, start there. If you haven't changed and start shopping off that Dirty Dozen Clean 15 list, go there next. If you don't know how to cook for yourself, start learning how to cook for yourself. Start with a couple basic recipes. Start with a salad. You're not going to burn a salad. Hard to do salads wrong.
We like salad.
Yep, come on the shopping tour with us.
Yes.
If you can't come live, join us for the virtual shopping tour that we'll do and we'll post here on Facebook Live and YouTube. And you can watch all the time if you need to. We'll post that for you guys. But I'll say this. The most important, essential, and we've got 5 of them, right? Your mindset, your nervous system, your nutrition, your fitness, and your toxicity levels all play a major role. And which one you're not doing is the one that can kill you. If you haven't gotten your spine checked, start there. Because no one's going to do it for you. You have to be the one to take that responsibility and take action. Text SPINE to 531-289-7100 to receive a 60% discount off of the exam and off of any necessary x-rays. That comes out to $52. I don't know anywhere where you're going to get the level of analysis and care in just simple x-ray taking that you will hear at Good Life Family Chiropractic. The level of neurological testing and interpretation that you get in our imaging process alone is greater than any place that you'll receive outside of a neurosurgeon's office. And you have my promise to take care of you to the level of the best neurology specialists in the world. But you have to text us tonight. Again, that's 531-289-7100. Text SPINE to get that discount. Text JOURNAL to receive the food journal. And I don't remember the other one. Essentials to receive 50% off of your essentials packet. The next class, we will be live streaming it again. But if you want to join us in person so that you can pick up some of these things in place, in person, live, I always think this is better live. Always better in person. So join us on June 1st at 6:30 p.m. to kick off our parenting month. It's our family-focused month. All June, we're going to be focused on families and raising healthy families. And so join us that month. You can text us, let us know that you want to come. We'll save you a seat, or we'll send you a text with the link so you can do the webinar live and in person. But thank you for joining us. For myself, the whole team here at Good Life Family Chiropractic, you be blessed, stay safe, and absolutely stay healthy. God bless you all.
Yeah, very good.